Welcome to the next episode of the VSP podcast. I'm Anthony, founder of Victory Sports Performance, and today we're going to be talking all about acceleration. Everyone wants to get faster. Let's help you get faster. Acceleration is not just about running fast. Oftentimes people come in here and they think if I just sprint and do these random drills, it's going to help me get faster. But usually that doesn't necessarily help. And that's why during our assessment process, we really try to dive into the technique, seeing what's going on. We'll film, break down the mechanics, and get a true understanding of where they are, maybe encountering some energy leaks or mobility or stability issues. And that's why videoing is really, really important. And we look at three characteristics, which we're going to dive into today. Number one is going to be hip extension, which essentially is how far behind your hip can you get your knee? Then we look at hip flexion, right, which a lot of people work on, which is how high can you get that knee up? And then lastly is, how does your foot interact with the ground? All three of those intertwine and they play with each other, but we can try to break those down and give specific drills to work on the areas that you need to. So first off, let's start with hip extension. So as I mentioned, this is where your knee is trying to get as far behind your hip as possible. Some people also call it triple extension, where your hip, knee, and ankle all create a nice straight line. It's really, really important in order to cover a lot of ground when you sprint, because it's not always about how quickly you can move your legs. Sometimes it's more about power, right? Covering ground, being explosive, which is really important during the acceleration phase. One of the things that's really important with the acceleration is understanding that horizontal force is more important than vertical force. We want to go forward. A lot of people talk about running low, and running low isn't necessarily because you're hunching over. It's more because you are projecting your body straight forward. You're understanding how to extend your hip, right? Hip extension, back, so I can go forward. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult for people to grasp in the beginning, but the more you feel it and see it, the easier it is to conceptualize. And hopefully, with proper drills and technique, you'll start to improve it. A couple drills that we like to work on, to improve hip extension, is something called a mountain climber, but it's something that it teaches you how to push down and back into the ground, fully extend your hip where your knee is completely behind that hip, and drive forward. And you'll feel yourself want to pop forward, pop through the wall, or pop through the fence that you're on. It's really simple to do and execute, and hopefully it will give you a real feel when you're trying to improve your acceleration. Next up is something simple. It's called a half kneeling sprint. It teaches you the correct position to start in, right? A lot of people, when they're setting up for a sprint, they're super upright. If you look at your front shin when you're sprinting, you're going to notice a lot of times it creates a straight up and down angle, where we want that shin to be forward, right? Like you should want your whole body to be leaned forward. Your hips, that front shin, the shoulders, everything needs to be leaned forward so you can push down and back. So the half kneeling sprints helps get athletes or individuals into the correct position so they can feel that forward lean and then drive down and back, creating that good hip extension to go forward. Those are two simple drills that you could do to improve your hip extension. Now next up, we're gonna swing to the front side, right? Because that's more of a backside mechanic issue. Now we're going to go to the front side where we'll work on hip flexion, right? Not nearly as important. It's a lot easier to get hip flexion than it is to get hip extension, but still important, because when I teach a lot of the athletes how to sprint properly, it's about creating thigh separation, trying to get my front thigh as far away from my back thigh as possible. And you do that by creating hip flexion in the front, hip extension in the back. To work on hip flexion, there's a lot of drills that you can do, right? The mountain climber drill I mentioned before, you could work on hip flexion, but something really simple is you attach a band to your toes and you just do a banded march. And all you're trying to feel is getting that thigh up and in front of you, right? And you're gonna feel the front of that hip working pretty darn hard too, because oftentimes people don't work on those small muscles in the gym, but it's a good way to teach you, hey, what does hip flexion feel like? The second exercise I'm gonna talk about is more dynamic. It's gonna be a falling sprint. So when you're setting up on the line, you're getting ready to sprint forward, put your feet side by side, and you're gonna lean forward, and all you're gonna do is you're gonna feel yourself punch one of your knees forward, right? You're trying to really drive hip flexion, and then you go into your sprint, and then you're gonna end up going to hip extension in the rest of the sprint, but you're trying to really create a lot of space in front of you using that thigh. Again, two simple drills that you can quickly apply, right at home. Now, lastly, this is a very, very overlooked part or characteristic of sprinting. It's the way your foot interacts with the ground. That's going to tell you absolutely everything. So when I watch sprinters, right, so I film somebody sprinting, I'm looking to see where does that foot get placed on the ground? How far in front of their center of mass? How far out to the side or immediately does it land, right? What happens with the foot? right? Are you getting a lot of collapsing going on, right? We look for, especially when we're in the acceleration phase, we're looking for a lot of stiffness in the foot. So when your foot hits the ground, is there a lot of collapse into that back heel? Can you yield properly, right? If you can't, that's an energy leak, right? It's potential injury risk, but also it's not going to allow you to accelerate as quickly. So that's the way, that's my coach's eye. That's the lens that I'm looking through when I'm looking at how the foot interacts with the ground. And some simple drills that I like to do to work on the way that your foot interacts with the ground is a simple bent knee calf raise, right? So I'll have an athlete get into a split stance position or a split squat position, and all they're gonna feel is lifting the heel up and holding that position, right? Because that gets their foot in a strong acceleration position, and feeling the balls of the feet or that forefoot activate as they go up and down in that position. And then what I do is I have them go into a staggered stance sprint and just do punches, right? So I call it like a 3-inch punch. I stole this one from Stu McMillan, where they lift their foot up in front of them and they try to punch the ground, and they're trying to drive that foot down and back and feel themselves propel forward, right? The more you can feel your foot drive down and back in the acceleration, the easier it's going to be. So I just gave you 6 really, really simple drills, things that you can apply right at home to help improve your acceleration. All 3 matter, right? All 3 characteristics matter, right? From the hip extension to the hip flexion to the foot to ground interaction. And every single person that I evaluate shows different ways of doing that, of organizing their limbs to achieve acceleration. And it's not always like one way is better than the other. If you look at all the best sprinters in the world, they all do it a little bit differently. But what it comes down to is, how do I get you to be faster? So if you're interested in getting faster, please visit our website, vsbtrain.com, visit our webpage, our Instagram, look us up, shoot us any messages, even if you're not from around the area. We would love to help you. I appreciate you tuning in, and get ready for the next one.